Welcome, welcome. Today you're going to come into my sewing room and we're going to talk about fold over elastic. It's very easy to apply. I have it on the shirt I'm in and I'll show you several different ways to do it and really to keep it simple. Alright? It's used on tops as well as skirts, actually as well as pants. Here's a skirt I made, but I copied it out of Ready to Wear. The fold over elastic you can just see is folded over the top and then it's just stopped at the zipper. I put a large hook and eye at the top just to kind of secure it, but when you put it at the top of a waistband, you're just going to wrap it around and then top stitch. So very simple to do on the top of a skirt. Pant would be done exactly the same way. Alright, and now let's talk about tops. And I brought some examples for you to see, and these are well-known designers. We're going to start with Armani. Now this is not fold over elastic, but I'm just using it to show you examples of different ways things are done. This is a bias binding. We're familiar with that, but what I want to show you is when you do a bias binding, you actually fold it in half after the seam is made and then it's serged onto the neck edge. So you see that that shoulder seam is smooth, or that little seam right there. Notice that it's the left shoulder seam that is always where the union is of the band. There is no seam on this side at all, that's the right side, simply on the left side. Okay, so, but when we get into fold over tape, elastic, it doesn't matter what it is. This is an Armani and this t-shirt is roughly $300 to $400. You can see that the elastic is actually put on first and then the shoulder seam is made. So yes, indeed, the serging kind of sticks out into the shoulder seam. It's really important, I think, for home sewers to see this, because we think if we do it this way, it's junky or it's whatever. It might be junky, but it's how it's done in Ready to Wear. So that's Armani on their construction, and then I want to also show you Elie Tahari. This is an Elie Tahari t-shirt, and it's done the same way. The banding itself, whatever it is, fold over elastic, whatever it is actually put on first, and then the shoulder seam is created. So I'm going to show you both ways to do it, but I just wanted you to see those examples so you could really understand the differences. So again, let's look at just some variances and then I'll get into sewing. Here I used fold over elastic on the sleeve. And I used on the sleeve, I used some netting, and then I created a little cap and I put it at the base, kind of like a little cap sleeve, and separated. I had seen that on a Ready to Wear garment and I just really liked it, so I duplicated it. Here is like the top I have on. It's the fold over elastic is around the neck edge. Whoops, sorry, that got hung up a little bit. Anyway, it's around the neck edge, and then it's also around the armhole seams. So you can put it neck edge and armhole, you can put it just neck edge, you can do anything you want with it. There's lots of different colors out there, so experiment with colors. The fabric that we're going to be working on today is this. Now the reason I chose this particular fabric color is I wanted to go in with a light fold over elastic, white in other words, a lighter color. We have black, we have denim, and there's lots of places that have lots of different colors. There's so many different things you can do. This way I'm going to show you how to do one continuous piece, and then I'm going to do it again by simply putting it on and then showing you how to make the shoulder seam after the fact. Alright, so let's get started on our sewing. This is the fabric that I used. This is exactly the neck edge, everything exactly the same as what you saw in the finished one. Now, when you're cutting it out, what I did is I cut it out first, and then you need to cut away the seam allowance. You can't put the fold over elastic on top of the seam allowance, because if you're doing a jewel neck, it'll be too high. It'll change the neckline is what it will do. So make sure you cut away the seam allowance before you put the fold over elastic. You don't have to serge it, you can serge it, it doesn't make any difference. You do not have to finish that raw edge. Then what you want to do, and I think it's a little simpler, to actually fold it. I'm going to measure the neck edge. So I'm going to fold it as if it would be sewn. In either case, that right shoulder is sewn up, and that's why I have one sewn and one not sewn. If you were putting it all the way around, you would sew both seams. But I'm going to take my French curve and I'm literally going to measure the finished edge. Now don't go in because that's actually the stitch line, and here it's already been stitched, so when I fold it I overlap the seam allowances on the other edge so that I get an accurate measurement. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inches, and then do the other side, back, front, first. It doesn't make any difference. I'm going to lay that down and measure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 and 5 is 11, and because that's only half the neck edge, I have to double that, so that's 22. So I got 22 inches. Now remember, this is the first method. I want to cut my elastic to fit. I'm going to make the seam and then sew it on all the way around. So I cut my elastic. Instead of 22, I'm going to make it 21. I'm going to give just an inch shorter. I want just a little bit of pull all the way around. If you make it exact, the elastic, the fold over elastic, will have a tendency to flute as it goes around the neck edge, and you don't want that. Let's take a closer look at fold over elastic so that you can see when you look at it, one side is shiny and one side is dull. There's not a right or wrong. It doesn't make any difference. There's times I've decided that I wanted to use a little, glitz, and I put the shiny on the outside, and vice versa. If I just want to tone it down, I put the matte side on the outside. So there's not a right and wrong. If you look at any fold over elastic, it is kind of perforated. It's not really perforated, but it's kind of got some type of seam right down the middle there, so it folds over exactly in half with no work, no pressing. You really don't need to press. You don't need to do any of that. So I have cut this to be exactly the length I need it to be. It's my 21 inches after my seam has been created. And when I do this, I'm going to show you a few little tips that will just make it really, really easy. Now, in my case, again, I'm using white elastic, and I'm going to stitch it with black thread. Let's go back to the sample here just so that you can see that. I'm using white elastic and I'm stitching with black thread. The only reason I'm doing this is simply so that you could see the white and the black. I honestly think I probably would have finished this with a black elastic, to be honest, but in today's case I really wanted you to see a white on a black. But if I'm stitching it with black thread, I still need to secure that seam with white thread, because otherwise it will pull and you will see the black thread, and I don't care who you are, that doesn't look good. So when I go ahead and make that seam, just make sure I line up my raw edges together, fold it in half. In this case I went and pressed it all along the way. When you are at the seam, if you open it up, notice I've cut away those little triangles so that I really don't have any extra right there. So I've snipped, 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 and snipped. Do not cut the threads that are holding that seam together, and don't try to backstitch. It's too much thread and too much, in one place. So just make the seam, but leave the threads there. Once I secure the elastic, the fold over elastic on the shirt, then I'll cut away these threads, and it's not to worry. But right now, I need to hold them in place. Okay, so then when I go to put it on the top, again, very easy to do. I align the seam of there to the seam of the shoulder seam, again left seam, and I merely stitch it all the way around. I'm pulling on the elastic. Now I'm going to sew this other one so you'll see how it's sewn, but I'm pulling the elastic and I'm pulling the shirt a little bit on both of those, and I just simply sew all the way around. Alright, so that method I'm going to put aside. I think it's definitely not harder, but I think it's definitely a little trickier to get it right. I'm going to show you how to sew it on, leaving the seam open. This is my left shoulder seam that's been left open. I've done my right shoulder seam, and this time I'm going to do just the opposite. I'm actually going to put the glitzy side to the outside, or the shiny side, whatever you want to call it, and it doesn't matter how much I leave off. I'm literally going to start stitching. I always give myself just a little bit of extra just so that I can get it started without any problem. When you're sewing, I'm going to stretch the top a little bit, I'm going to stretch the elastic a little bit, and not a lot, and you'll know by practice if it's too much. My machine is set to 3.5. It's important that you do not try to stitch this with a very small stitch, because if you do, it just will, the stitching is just too small. Because keep in mind that I am stretching this just a little bit. And as I'm stretching it, the stitch gets, once it stretches back, the stitch gets a little bit closer together. So if you stitch with too small a stitch, it just won't look right. What I do when I'm stitching this is I pick a point on my foot and I pick a point on my fold over elastic, and I simply align the two together. And if I just follow that all the way around, it's very easy as I keep going. I'm at the shoulder seam now. I'm at that would be the right shoulder seam. So I was trying to sew with my hand out of the way so that you all could see, but that's hard for me to do because I always have a hand back here to make sure the fabric's going through. Alright, so this is, again, very simple to do. Then I want to show you one finishing touch that you can do as an option that if you change the neckline just a little bit. I'll show you that after we get this finished up. Alright, so you can see I did not pre-press the elastic. Literally, I'm just putting I didn't serge the neck edge. This is a very easy finish to a neck edge. I just am laying that fabric right into the crease. You can see it when you get to your fold over elastic. And then keeping my elastic the same place on my foot so that my stitching will be the same distance from the raw edge. Okay, there we have it. We stitched all the way around. I'm going to give myself just a little bit extra, but you can see how nicely that lays. Then I'm going to do the shoulder seam, and when I do the shoulder seam, I'm going to do it, I can serge this. It's okay to serge it, but generally what I would do is stitch right this section with a sewing machine to make sure it's exactly lined up, and then you could restitch it with a serger just to finish the edge. It does not need to be stitched with a serger. It's totally your call. Now again, I want to make sure that's exactly the same width and that it's exactly at 3/8. And this should not be stitched with black, by the way. This should be stitched with white thread, because otherwise you'll see the union of those two. And see, I didn't get that exactly right. So I would take that out. Sorry, you guys, I'm going to do it again because I want you to see that it should be right. When I put those together, right sides together, I want those seams to be in the right place. Now actually, my seam is in a little bit on this side than it is on that side, so I would fix that because it's very easy to be right on. And then when you're on, your stitching and your elastic both should meet exactly. For now, I'm going to put a pin there because these are just little tiny things that are really easy to fix. But you can see there's what your fold over elastic looks like once it's done. And all I do is press it and it lays just really, really pretty. Okay, if you are doing a V-neck and you want to do fold over elastic on a V-neck, I did it on the shirt I have on, and I'm also going to show you this on the little Armani that's here. Because the fold over elastic or any kind of fold over, anything you do, won't go around a little bit of V, at the very bottom of the V, and again you can see it with the top I have on, there's just a little dart stitched right there. And on this Armani, I'm going to show you on the inside so you can see that there's the dart. And you can do this after you're finished completely, so you don't have to figure how much it would be, but you put it on, you pinch it, and you can see there's more sewn there than what's sewn here, and there's your little dart. It actually tapers to nothing right there at center front, and that's what turns a kind of a U-shaped neck into a V-shaped neck. And it's a great little finish. So use your fold over elastic. It's wonderful on your skirts, on your pants, on your finish a sleeve, a neckline, whatever you want, and it really is a terrific, easy look. So have fun with your summer sewing and throw in a little fold over elastic. Thanks for watching. Happy sewing.